Hello, welcome to Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota. I'm Katia. Citizens for Global Solutions Minnesota is a nonprofit organization based in the state of Minnesota in the United States. Every third Thursday of every month, we host a global movies discussion about a movie based in true events or a documentary chosen to expand our horizons and educate us about important topics. The event is free and open to anyone. If you want to learn more about CGS Minnesota work, please visit our website, www.globalsolutionsmn.org, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook pages. Our Facebook is Global Solutions MN. Our Twitter is CGS_MN. And our YouTube is CGSMN all together. As part of our program this month, we recommended the documentary Aluna, A Journey to Save the World. Ladies and gentlemen, to share this extraordinary story of Kogi people, a lost civilization hidden in a mountain in Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in Colombia on the Caribbean coast, we invited the talented, my friend, Diana Quintero. Diana Quintero is a visiting human rights engaged scholar at the Hubert Humphrey School of Public Affairs. She has been teaching since 2008 a human rights law clinic focused on legal defense to vulnerable communities and groups such as armed conflict victims and people living under environmental risks. She participates in different professional nets on sexual and reproductive rights of women and in women's equality as well. And she's a Fulbright Humphrey Fellow from 2012-13 at the U of M Law School. With you, Diana Quintero.
Thank you, Katia. Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited about being here and also to see many familiar faces. This is really great to be here. So let's get started. When I received the invitation to participate in this global films discussion, a movie about the Colombian conflict and civil rights violations seemed the perfect one to me, as we continue facing killings of reintegrated guerrillas members, threats and murders of social and environmentalist leaders. However, as Katia said, my work as a professor and also as a human rights defender has focused on socioeconomic, cultural, and environmental rights. So we decided to choose Aluna. So let's see the slides. Please. Kathy is going to help me with that. Thank you. So in this one, you can read an example of the enthusiasm the film generated, and I think that the expressions that we can read here, fascinating, powerful, really describe well what we've seen and like all the marvelous things that the Kogi peoples are doing and have been doing throughout these last years. So I want to clarify first my perspective on the film. I haven't been involved directly with the Kogis, but I have worked with other communities, like the NASA community that live in a region badly impacted by the conflict. I also have worked representing and advising local communities at environmental risks in other areas of the country. So what I'm going to do now is going to give you some context related to the Kogi's territory, history, and culture. Secondly, I will explain the broad legal framework in which indigenous peoples interact with local and national governments, which we can characterize as full of tensions. And finally, I want to highlight some key expressions or parts of the film that resonates when talking on human rights. The next, please. So let's talk about the territory. The Kogis or Kagava are the sons of the jaguar. They live in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, and they are one of 4 ancestral groups descendants from the Tyronas. In 2012, the population was around 20,000, and according to recent data, they have decreased to 9,000. And not only COVID, but also current socioeconomic and political dynamics on their lands might be behind these catastrophic numbers. Next, please. So when we talk about the Sierra Nevada, you can see there's a reserve that has 400,000 hectares or 1,500 square miles. Kogis call this area that you can see here in green the heart of the earth. It is the highest coastal range in the tropics that encompasses all the ecosystems, 3 states, and serves as the source of 36 rivers in about 6,600 square miles. The territory has tropical areas at lower elevations, temperate areas, and permanently snow-covered peaks. The journal Science listed it among 6 irreplaceable places on Earth, as they are essential for species survival. The next, please. In 1979, UNESCO declared the Tyrona National Park as a biosphere reserve of man and humanity. And in the next slide, you can see the 2 highest peaks of the Sierra. The next one, please. Yeah, which are called, as you can see here, Pico Simón Bolívar and Pico Colón. And they reach an elevation of 8,000 feet, just 26 miles from the Caribbean coast. So let's talk about the history and the culture. The Tyronas was one of the more advanced cultures of South America. They've been less exposed to acculturation, conserving their native language, oral and mythical traditions. Aluna means the mother. It is also the ocean. And as I've heard in another video, they wouldn't dare to swim in the ocean. Yeah, Aluna is a space where the cosmos was created, and in the beginning, she was water, river, lagoon, sea, and basin. She's also spirit, thought, and memory. The mamas, or the spiritual leaders, the enlightened ones, are bridges between Aluna and the material world. Through constant meditation, the mother guides them on almost every matter. Originally, they have a matriarchal society, despite now the mamas, as you saw, are men, but they declare the important role played by women in their society and how any violence against them is considered an attack to the mother. This is really important because in the indigenous communities that I have worked with, we have found a lot of violence against women, especially sexual violence against young women. Can we see the next, please? So they were considered, the Tyronas, as a big civilization. When the invasion from Spain took place, the Tyronas had a well-developed communication net, strong commercial partners, they had sophisticated water channels, and a blooming goldsmithing with great spiritual value, as you can see these images. And in the next slide, you also can see another of these pieces. They are from the Museo del Oro, located in Bogotá, Colombia. So this is the context that I briefly wanted to bring so we can understand a little bit more what Aluna is about. And now I'm going to mention briefly the legal framework. And as I told you, this is like full of tensions between their own traditions and culture and the local and national rules and traditions. Our 1991 Constitution includes several provisions that have benefit Colombian ancestral communities' rights, not only socioeconomic rights, but also civil and political rights. I'm going to just give you a couple of examples. Article 7 recognizes and protects the ethnic and cultural diversity of the country. Article 63 defines the reserved territories, and it gave fundamental rights status to collective ownership of these lands. And Article 7 recognizes equal value to all cultures. So finally, Articles 79 and 80 prescribe a sustainable development principle and recognize a right to everyone to a healthy environment and communities' participation in relevant decisions. So this is like the general constitutional framework. But we also have the Convention 109 on Indigenous and Tribal Peoples that has been pivotal in the legal protection of these rights. Our Constitutional Court continuously uses its provisions to interpret relevant legal and administrative rules. So it has like a constitutional status. The consulta previa, for instance, is a conventional mechanism that mandates consulting communities on infrastructure projects impacting their territories. And this is something that has been really important for the communities, although, as we will talk later, the communities consider that this consulta hasn't been always been used by the government. So Aluna is to the Kogis what Pachamama is to Ecuadorian indigenous populations. As you might know, Pachamama recognition is enshrined in their 2008 constitution under the Rights of Nature chapter, establishing Pachamama as a legal entity that has rights. So this shift has opened the gate to new Latin American judicial decisions that recognize rivers, forests, and animals as entities with rights. We have to say that many legal disputes have been raised around these decisions. But the film and similar visual materials giving voice to these peoples might have triggered these kinds of innovation. In the last part, I'm going to mention some assessment made by the Kogis. And what stood out to me are intersectionalities between constitutional environmental rights and cultural rights violations. So I'm going to start with the first one that you must have heard. I'm quoting here. We mutilate the world because we do not remember the Great Mother. Some elements of Kogi culture helps us to understand their approach to these issues. First, the idea that the earth speaks to us, that explains the Kogi method of wait, watch, and listen to nature. And second, their highly spiritualized relationship with the territory. Kogis believe that nature is a living being with feelings, needs, and with authority. As we heard, they asked the mother permission for everything, to build a temple, ask her where to sit, what to hunt, how to give offerings for everything they take from nature. So we can see this mutilation in, for instance, how the Sierra Nevada has been losing its glacier mass, and it will likely be extinct within the next 15 years. It's a tragedy, and it also has been the fate of many glacier masses throughout the world. In 1850, 32 square miles were covered by snow, and currently we are talking about only 2.2 square miles. The second assessment that I want to quote and talk about is nature itself will finish us off. That was said also by the mama. And here we can identify specific actors beyond any broad discussion on climate change. Some Colombian and local government decisions are directly destroying the ecosystems as they grant permissions to extractive companies and plant foreign trees around the lagoons, for instance. The destruction of Suama Huculwa to build a port, Puerto Brisa, not only changed the riverbeds and lead to the extinction of Hanyo trees. I mean, it had other impacts that were damaging as well. The inspection panel for the project found serious contaminating practices like improper storage of coal, insufficient cleanup of tractor trailers, and pollution of the terminal's dock areas adjacent to ocean waters. So they were contaminating basically the oceans. Can we see the next one, please? So connecting the sites with 400 kilometers golden thread, remember in the movie we saw the golden thread, was fundamental to show these destructive outcomes of so-called development projects. In cream color, perhaps you cannot see, but it's in the middle of the Sierra, you see the territories under the Kogi's political control. And in green, you can see their proposed extension. They've been working on extending their territories in order to save them and to undo all the environmental damage that has been done for basically for the extractive projects, but also for tourism and for local farmers' bad practices as well. I want to mention also some positive impacts on the Kogi's struggle. The first one is the testimony that we saw in the film, the Huachaca Basin recovery in 20 years ago under Kogi's control. That was something really outstanding since we were able to see it. Animals came back, there is water again. So we can see that returning the Sierra to their control has had a really visible and positive result. The second one is the Colombian government has implemented a rehabilitation project in the Ciénaga Grande de Santa Marta, which is the last point of the golden thread journey that we saw in the film. But this is an ongoing process, as it happens with most of the governmental projects. This is still really slow, and there are many legal disputes around, especially the landowners, with the landowners around the Ciénaga. And last but not least, the Kogis bought, with the support of the government, but also the Amazon Conservation Team, 150 hectares of sacred territory in the shores. So that's something really important. They now have some more shores that they used to have. Normally, they didn't have access to the shores, which was really bad, not only for their traditions, but also for the environment, as we saw in the film. They really need to collect the shells for getting the ashes that they use for chewing the coca leaves. And this is a spiritual practice. So this is not something that you can get rid of it without suffer cultural damage and losing part of your culture. They keep the Kogi is very active. They cleaning aquatic shores, educating neighbors who are willing to learn to manage their properties more sustainably, and presenting constitutional petitions before courts to prevent local farmers and businesses from destroying the Sierra Nevada. So they continue struggling. However, they've been bad hit by the COVID. I just realized that one of the mamas that have been really active passed away last year, unfortunately, due to COVID. In the beginning, they didn't want to be vaccinated, and they were arguing with the states because they thought that was not something like compatible with their culture. But last year, it was like 300 Kogis were dead. And since I told you that the population has been is really now really low, like basically they've been they are close to to be extinguished soon. Well, this is what I want to share about what the Kogis do. I can, if you want, through Q&A, I can go in, like, give more details about all the problems that the lack of respectful dialogue with ancestral tribes bring to our societies. I have some examples about things that especially the national government is doing that are really badly affecting not only the community but also our environment. So I live here, and I want to thank you for your attention, and looking forward to answering your questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. Amazing. So we will we will open for questions and answers. And first of all, thank you so much for agreeing and accepting our invitation. And I know that you have been teaching, and you know so much. I feel like I need the entire week with you just to talk about this. So I would like to take advantage of my privilege here and start with a comment kind of question. So there were many moments in the documentary that really touched me. For example, when Mama, he says, well, you don't listen to us if we don't go to the same school, if we don't dress like you, if we don't have the shoes, I'm paraphrasing. But it is very powerful. It's very sad too, because I felt what he was feeling. And I feel like that's true, not only for them, it's true in our society. The society right now doesn't accept if the person doesn't have a title, or a scholarly title, or money, or it's well dressed in a suit. So I wonder, and at the same time, we do have scientists, and we had in the documentary confirming what the tribe was saying, and there were plenty confirmations. So I wonder what do you think about that parallel, the fact that they were telling the truth, and the people are might consider them, our society might consider them uncivilized, they don't write, and they or at least they didn't go to the same type of school that we did, but at the same time they have so much wisdom to share, and at the same time they say so many things that the other people with PhD and that were speaking in the documentary said, confirmed that they did. So how do you see that? Do we need really to have just scientists confirming and telling us? Are we able to understand what these people are saying?
Thank you, Katia, for that wonderful question. Well, the first thing that came to my mind when you were talking about that is that cultural diversity is a constitutional principle in our constitution in Colombia. And sometimes we don't really pay attention to the meaning of that principle. What does it mean to accept or to embrace cultural diversity? and perhaps has to do with respecting each other's with no regard to our education level, to the language we speak, to the beliefs we have, even to the religions we profess. So in the documentary, as you mentioned, we saw that it was all the time like a need for validation, you know, like everything the Kogis were trying, the point they were trying to make needed to be validated from scientists, a Western scientist, which is kind of silly because we've been seeing the effects of climate change and all the destruction of the glacier masses throughout the last decades. And that's, we shouldn't need, you know, proofs for that. But yeah, it was necessary, the confirmation of the biologists, environmentalists, and so forth. So that perhaps it's a proof of the lack of recognition. The principle of equal recognition, the equal value of every human being is something that we still have to work on in our societies. It's the same in Colombia. I think it's the same here. This society also struggles with recognizing and accepting people from different racial backgrounds. So I think it's not only sad, but it's the reality. And I want to highlight something that we saw in the documentary. Remember when the mama explains to the British astronomer about the single isolated star in the picture, and he said, why couldn't we learn from them? You know, the Western astronomer recognized that it took them, I don't know, years to realize, and big you know, machines to see these types of things, and these like ancestral cultures, they already knew a lot. And we know that also in Mexico, I mean, the Aztecas knew a lot about, you know, the stars and the world out there. So it's I think that was a really powerful, like, that point that we've been missing a lot for not listening to them, for not engaging in respectful conversations with them, for not being able to listen them because we are always paying attention to what PhD do you have, how well do you speak another language, you know, and some of them, they couldn't even speak Spanish. So can you imagine how hard it has been for them to just to be heard from the local authorities, from heard from our government also.
Thank you. So we already have 2 questions in the chat, and for the purpose of benefiting everybody who is watching this video, I'm going to read to you. Yeah. To what extent are indigenous people participating in the reforestation and other ecological restoration?
Yeah, that's really interesting. What I know is that they've been trying to participate deeply. However, there are many restrictions to that participation. And for instance, there are like some legal decrees that are like pointing out the fact that we must respect the property rights of the local farmers, but in many cases those farmers are not really willing to respect, you know, or to embrace sustainable practices. And we also have the problem of the, you know, the narcotics issue. So in many cases there are many like portion of the land dedicated to produce a cocaine to export to other countries. So this is terrible because you cannot, but they are criminals, right? So you cannot engage in a legal or a cooperative conversation with them. So that's another issue. But now I know that they've been, for instance, they've been working on coffee crops. And in the beginning, they were rejecting, the idea of having coffee plantations in their lands because they didn't belong to that area. But more recently, they ended up accepting, because that's a reality now. There are many farmers producing coffee because I mean, from the economic perspective, it is profitable. So the Kogis itself, they've been also working on harvesting coffee, but it also trying to do it in a very respectful way with the territory. So that's what I can say from that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, the second question was, or is agriculture the main livelihood of the native people? Did you want to add anything to what you said?
Yeah, definitely. Kyrgyz, yeah, they are dedicated to agriculture, definitely. They know how to do it really well, and they actually they've been getting more money from their activities, so they now can get more land. Um, but also, I think that this this thing that many of the Kogis are going to schools in Colombia. For instance, you can find many Kogis and Arhuaco now going to the universities in Bogota. They are more aware of the importance of their culture and their journey, explaining to who they call hermanos menores, the younger brother, explaining the effects of what we are doing. So I think they are also kind of advocating environmental rights, particularly women. Surprising, the most of Kogis that are attending universities now are women. I read that 47% of women that are indigenous women that are attending schools are women. So yeah, they are. I think the main activity is agriculture, but they are also paying attention to other types of advocacy in order to be able to tackle these problems that I have mentioned here.
Okay. What has changed for the Kogi regarding their impact in Colombia and to the scientific community since 2014 when the film was originally released?
Yeah, I saw the other day a video, a YouTube video with a Google team and with the ACT, the Amazon team that I mentioned. And it seems that this scientific community is more open now, to listen to the Kyrgyz, to establish partnerships. They mentioned in the video that they already know, the Google team, they already know that they don't know everything about the world in which we live, the universe, neither, and where we live. So they were willing to listen to them. So I think that's something really, really good. And I think it's more good for us and for the Kogis in terms of, well, they've been there for for centuries, and they were kind of really separated from the rest of the Western world. Basically, they didn't want to be acculturated, as I mentioned. But now that they are more open to partner with organizations that can help them to speak out, to put out there the concerns that we all are sharing regarding the climate change and even the diseases that we're seeing. I remember in some part of the video, they mentioned that soon, and they were talking in 2011 when they said that soon we will see some illnesses that we won't find a cure for them. So they were kind of, foreseeing the things that could happen if we didn't listen. So I think those types of assessments and concerns they were raising have made the scientific world pay more attention to them, to what they have to say.
Next question is, to what extent have the Kogi people been affected by tourism?
Yeah, well, I cannot give you numbers, like how much hectares have been, of the Sierra have been destroyed for tourism. But I guess you can Google that and perhaps you will find some numbers, although we don't have like accurate data normally on the issues that really matter, unfortunately. There are some parts. Can you show the map, dear Katia? So I use the map for explaining this. The map of the Sierra that is in the presentation. So yeah, the second slide, the map. I think it's better the other one because it's too light. Up the, yeah, that one. Yeah, can you? Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, that one. No, the last. Okay, yeah. So look, it's not too big, but you can see here. So basically, all of the shores most of the shores belong to private companies and like how do I say these well, owners of the land that are building up types of condominiums and luxury buildings. So all around these shores that are in the upper side of the reserve have been really impacted with the construction of luxury buildings and houses, which is really bad because as we saw the territory that the Kogis would like to have, according to the Golden Thread, will be all that region that belongs also to the Sierra, because it's, as I told you, the Sierra Nevada has all types of ecosystems, and those belonging to the shores are also part of the Sierra, so they should be protected areas according to our legislation. But the economic reality, it's really preventing them, from recovering these lands here. So they have just small portions of these territories. I think it will be like less than a fourth part of the shores. The rest of it is full of constructions, buildings, and some mining industries also, like a big one called Cerrejón, that is a national coal mining enterprise.
So they do live, we can see in
the high mountains.
Yeah, in the high mountains, but they have a bigger land. So there is, I was very curious when you said the agriculture is their main source. And I was wondering where it was, because when we had the video, from up, we really saw the top of the mountain, all their housing and nothing else. So I was wondering, where do they plant?
No, they have the territory. I mean, they can plant in that national park area. The thing is, they know how to do it in order to preserve the big trees, the forest, So they where they are planting, you won't see deforestation or like the land, like dry or the rivers destroyed. That's why it seems that they are not, cultivating, but they are.
Mm-hmm. I was surprised with the pictures you showed of the artifacts made of gold, and they are very detailed. So their ancestors made that.
Yeah.
You have to have minimally be very advanced in many arts in order to do such a very detailed and delicate pieces. And it's unfair anybody to say them that they are not civilized, because of what's civilization about? Because they are doing art, perhaps sometimes even more beautiful than arts that they were provided by civilized
world. Yeah, but this is a part of the tragedy, because for them, these pieces are spiritual offerings to the motherland, to Aluna. They are not supposed to have they are not supposed to be wealth. And when they offer some of these species in some specific regions, they have more than 350 sacred sites throughout the Sierra. So there are many. And when if what means to them to have a sacred site is that they just plant their offerings. And it used to be golden offerings, of course, many centuries ago. But now the local, remember there's in some part of the film, we saw a local miner saying, "Oh, we're really sorry, but we have to live or something," so they continue, digging and extracting the offerings from the land. In the final scene of the film, we saw, do you remember we saw the group of Kogi standing in front of an exhibition displayed at the Golden Museum. They are watching the collection of pieces that their ancestors created as offerings. They are really beautiful and really they're great pieces there. But they have been plundered as well. And the local miners that keep digging, and the state is doing nothing basically about it. So they think that this also the fact that all these species have been plundered is affecting the earth. It's because those offerings were planted for maintain balance. The idea of balance. When you take from the earth, you have to give back. That's the point for creating these beautiful pieces. This shows you an idea that when they take, for instance, some a crop, a coffee crop or something from the land, they are taking something really valuable. This is why they give back something made of gold and made and a beautiful, a piece of art. But this is a cultural practice that is no longer, existing because of what we're seeing. And now the gold, it's not possible to find it. So they definitely lost this part of the culture, despite their culture has been protected under the UNESCO, as I mentioned, but there are parts that definitely will be lost for good. And goldsmith, it's one of them.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Because I still have a lot.
I'm sorry, it says that I'm moving my laptop. I'm sorry.
Okay, so while people are thinking, I have one question. So in your opinion, as a lawyer that you are, and a professor, and a person who studies the indigenous people, and at the same time, you know so much about law in Colombia, I wanted your personal opinion. So the Colombian Constitution has some provisions protecting reservations and indigenous people. What is your opinion? Is that enough? Is that enough to protect what the Constitution says? And if it is, what is the problem that is happening? And so many things happen. So it's lack of enforcement of the protections, or there isn't enough provisions to protect them. And then some other measures should be taken in order to find the needed protection?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I mean, there are different levels of problems about the legal framework. First, there are many overlapping agencies, local, regional, and national, claiming the decision-making capacities in the region, which means more bureaucratic requirements for expanding the reserve, the Kogi's territory. That's something really bad, because if the community go to the local government asking for permission for, recovering or for restoring some area, then they will start like having referral issues. Then basically these agencies, they will send them to another agency and so forth. So, and the legal frame allows that horrible practice to occur, to take place. Another problem has to do with like the position of the government in front of their legal duties. The Kogis know that there are at least 3 administrative decrees that are protecting them. There's one from 1973. There's another one from 1995, and the last one was enacted in 2018. And basically, in these decrees, the national authorities are recognizing all the territories that belong to the golden thread that are inside, that the Kogis are claiming. But they also say, and this is the problem, that all the property rights to the local owners have to be respected. So it's more a symbolic recognition, more than a real one. Because if you have to protect those people that are basically living in the shores or living inside of the national park, then you are not really protecting the Kogi's territories. But the other thing is that when this happened, the Constitutional Court has been trying to, through the principle of maximization of indigenous authority and indigenous independence, has been trying to expand the protections to make them not only symbolic but also real. That struggle continues. Sometimes the court agrees on protect some parts of the territory. I remember the first decisions of the Constitutional Court by the 1990s were really good, because basically the court took seriously the responsibility of interpreting our legal framework in favor of, in a way that is favorable, in favor of the community's rights. And the thing is that even I remember that sometimes they were sending some judges to live with the communities for a while, so they could understand, their cosmovision, because they don't have like a written tradition. And so the court took seriously this responsibility, but in the recent years, there has been some overruling decisions about this, the extent to which the autonomy of the territories has to be preserved. And on the other hand, the President Duque, the current president of the country, is not really willing to comply with these administrative decrees, neither with judicial orders. And the last time I heard from his Secretary of Government, she was trying to derogate the administrative decrees recognizing the territory. So they want to go further, they act similar to Bolsonaro in Brazil. Basically, they have this really old and and terrible idea of development, and the idea that mining industries are the futures of our societies, that these indigenous are just like barriers, you know, in front of all the productive projects that we might be having. So this is the vision of the current government.
Bolsonaro in Brazil, he said specifically when he was campaigning that if he was elected, he would end all reservations, all. He was going to exterminate any reservations. And although he didn't.
He's fulfilling his word, right?
I'm sorry?
Is he trying to fulfill his word?
He is trying hard. He didn't manage to, but he and his ministers have been working to pass legislation to allow people to enter into the reservations and cut the wood and explore the nature. So that's a good way. And there are cases that many cases of that we learned that indigenous people were shot dead. And for those who don't know, we are talking about part of the Amazon that, you know, it's part of that. If you can see the South American map in your mind, you're going to see that the Amazon is not only in Brazil, it's the bulk of the Amazon is in Brazil, but gets a lot of other countries as well.
Colombia has an Amazon part also.
Exactly. So that's the importance of what we're saying. But there were cases where indigenous people were shot dead, and that's why there are criminal complaints against Bolsonaro in the International Criminal Court, and most of the international human rights bodies in the world, right, going on right now. So that's the type of work that he's doing. And I appreciate that you mentioned and made the parallel, because it gives us a good idea of, you know, you really responded to my question, and I thank you for that. We do have a few other questions. The first one here from Kirk. Do the Kogi fear losing their own power of perception and mode of understanding with greater engagement beyond their community and education? On the other hand, they initiated the making of the documentary as a mission to the outside world, the world of the little brother trapped in destructive practices and values. Good question.
Yeah. I have to think on this one. Well, if they fear losing their own power for engaging with, like for studying, for instance, for going to universities.
I think he was, I understood here, losing their power of perception from their own perspective, right? Kurt?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of it's kind of an epistemological question. There's like these dual epistemologies going on. On the one hand, there's the scientific Western epistemology. On the other hand, they have a meditative, close, intimate knowledge, maybe a little more like Wendell Berry or somebody in the West, somebody like that, where they have this meditative mode of understanding and a spiritual mode of understanding of the dynamics. And they have real insights. You know, they had amazing hydrological insights, for example, about how the whole ecosystem is working. And I wonder if their kids going off, let's say, to university and becoming completely enculturated in sort of a scientific mode. It's a kind of spiritual practice that's tied to their insights.
Well,
and like the question of sort of an enchantment, if quote unquote, you know, an enchanted epistemology versus a reductive epistemology or something like that.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, and I think they might be, concerned about losing their culture for sure. But what I've been through the different websites that they have. Now they have websites. And what I think is that they, like the authorities, the traditional authorities, realized that if they kept being isolated, as they've been for the last decades, as they were before, they came out in 2011 or something, that basically our world will be destroyed. So they feel now that they have, it's something, I imagine that they are kind of balancing, their wish to keep their pure culture with their duty, of telling younger brother what is going to happen if we continue mistreating the land, the earth, and the natural resources we have in the way we've been doing it. So, and they, as I told you, I've been through the website, and I can see that these more educated Kogis are doing a great job in terms of translating into a language that we can understand their wisdom, their concerns, their experiences, and I think that they've seen really good like outcomes from that. So, but of course, there is always like a peril, right, to lose your culture, and they continue, for instance, like paying attention to some Christian churches coming close to their lands. That's something is not kind of acceptable for them, because the Christian acculturation has been really powerful, and I think I'm a Christian, but I think that will be like a great cultural impact on their beliefs and on their culture.
I love that question. So we have another question from Fred. Who represents the Kogi people for these important and likely long legal battles? Do they suffer from underrepresentation if they rely on nonprofit or donated legal work?
Yeah, at the beginning of the campaigning and the battles, yeah, they were like underrepresented. That's right. But we in Colombia, we've been fortunate to have many like legal clinics. We have legal aid offices that were really happy, especially many in Bogota, that they were really happy about being able to participate, in projects with Kogi people, with these populations. And the fact, when I did my PhD in Bogota, I remember that I saw many Arhuacos and Kogis attending the law school. So the one thing they lost is that they were like wearing shoes. For the original Kogis, being barefoot are essential to be connected with the land. But of course, for in Bogota, the going to the university. So yeah, definitely they lost some of the culture in that. But having attended the law schools and also receiving international attention, I think those things have been key to be able to have like a good quality legal representation.
Gianna, do you think that, I keep thinking of what you were saying about the acculturation and losing losing their culture. And I wonder, in your opinion, can you lose your fully, like, can they lose when they go to school and they get their PhDs or schools, and they start to wearing shoes? It's I can't even imagine how they would deal with walking barefoot in the middle of a big Bogota or in a big city like São Paulo, as has happened before, and without cutting and hurting themselves. But I wonder, in your opinion, are we able to go to another country and keep our culture? Can the indigenous people go and live, some of them live in the civilization, and those representatives who went to live with us, our civilization, can't they, aren't they able to keep the roots, keep speaking the language, and keep knowing? And perhaps they are uh, arming themselves with tools so they can better defend people, because in the past the defense was not an issue. They were not mistreated, and there were no threats from the government and from the civilization to just take away their lands and their treasures. And now it is an issue. Even the communication is a situation. So in the same way that I feel like the education in our civilization is a need for them, I at the same time I keep thinking whether these people who chose to be sent to school, if they actually can keep their rituals and their culture.
Well, I think for the Kogis, it's more easy to keep their culture because they are very cohesive, like with their authorities and the populations. We have many advantages in Colombia. One is that we have like a legal duty for the government to have what we call intercultural schools. So basically, the schools, I think it was a picture of one school in my life, and those schools are not in those schools are not allowed to teach like outsiders, like people from outside the community. So basically, they have to have Kogis professors, teachers there. That's one thing, and this is the case for all the country. So every time you have an indigenous population, their schools have to have their own professors. So the language, this is also, there is also a constitutional provision on that. That they cannot have a Spanish center education. That's one thing. The other good thing that we have, and I think this works. Also, we have another law that requires the healthcare providers to have specific services and clinics for indigenous communities. And these clinics have their own mamas, their own practices. So you cannot just put some clinic in the middle of the communities. No, this is something that was made by the former President Santos, and I think he's working well. I know some experiences in Chocó, which is another area of the country, because I have some friends working there, some doctors, and the experience is good so far. So this is another good thing for protecting, these communities. Another thing that really works well is that the Kogis are really like, they have many. Well, there is one main national organization, which is Colonic, like a national organization of all the indigenous tribes in Colombia, but they also have some local ones. So they are like really working together in terms of paying attention to the types of engagements they are involved in with the local authorities or local farmers. So that's another important thing that I think can prevent them from totally losing their culture. Not as we mentioned, they have lost part of it for sure. But the main ones, I think they are still, like really alive because of this these well advantages that I'm mentioning.
We have two last questions. Christy.
Well, I see Nancy's question, so I'll let her go. But I am in the process of reading The Thunder Before the Storm, which is Clyde Belcourt's book, who was an American Indian movement. And you kind of answered my question one about whether or not there's collaboration with the other indigenous communities in Colombia. But I guess connected to that, I'm wondering if there's been reach out for global communities or work with the International Indian Treaty Council or other across borders.
Yeah, I'm not aware of their international, networks on this particular issue, like if they belong to any, or if they have connections with an international body, like defending indigenous groups. But they might be, I mean, because when you listen to them, when you read the documents, the legal documents they are presenting, you can tell that they know what they are talking about, in terms of their rights, in terms of all the duties that the Colombia as a state has, with towards them. They might be, but I'm not like totally aware of which organizations they are connected with.
Okay, we have
One
more question
Sí,
from Nancy. Can you explain about the gold thread? The Kogi seemed frustrated that their guests could not understand how the gold thread proved their message of the interconnectedness of the world. But I'm not clear why they felt so strongly that the thread communicated this. Thank you, Nancy.
Yes. Well, the idea of the thread, as we saw in the map, is that all the sacred sites inside the Sierra are connected. And if you are damaging or destroying one of those sites, then you are gonna definitely destroy it or badly impact the an upper part of the Sierra. Of course, at the beginning, the journalists couldn't understand because it's like a non-Western idea, right? How can you think that there are sacred sites, that if you are destroying those sites, then you're gonna like destroy the hanyo trees, environment up the hill. So I think they were frustrated at certain point, but I kind of, and I think that at the end of the film, this was solved out in a good way. That was my sense, that finally, well, due to the explanations of the scientists that he was interviewing, also through these like the fact that they could go up there and see what is going on, in terms of the glacial destruction and some rivers destructions. They also had the chance to see, directly the impacts of the problems. We don't know for sure that if this guy believes that those sites are sacred or not, but definitely I think he had to admit at the end of the film that the Kogis have a point, and they made a point. So yeah, the idea of the thread is showing the connections and showing that the Sierra is one single territory, that it's really the heart of the earth. So it's some place that you really have to protect, because it's not only beautiful, and I want to invite you to come to visit the region. It's possible. It's not too, yeah, and it's so wonderful. I mean, you have no idea the nature, and but also this the indigenous like buildings. It's so amazing. So they do believe that that region it's really like a sacred site where the earth is connected to other perhaps universes or other I don't know spiritual entities, and definitely I think that you need to change your mind in order to understand that. But as a Western person, you just can go and feel something special that you might not be able to describe or to understand, but that you definitely feel. That you feel the power of those territories. I was remember the first time I went to Machu Picchu, and I have before that I have seen many times pictures of Machu Picchu, you know, so everybody kind of knows what you're gonna find there. But when you get there, I couldn't stop crying, and I didn't understand why. It is so powerful, and you cannot explain that. You know, it's something that you just can feel, and so I hope that the beautiful outcome of the journey might be a proof that the journalist and his team finally understood that something real was going on up there.
Yeah, I feel that we, in our Western and Uber civilization, we start going backwards and losing our capacity to understand a few things. And because we always needed to rationalize, then when you go to Machu Picchu, that you cry, you don't know why, you were just feeling it. And but I think if could help you to understand, I think the scientists who were appeared in the documentary, and they confirmed in many ways the wisdom and the knowledge that they were the Mama people were transmitting. That's reassuring for us. And when I had the difficulties as well and frustration as well with the gold thread, but I just want to leave you with that there was that scientist, that woman, I can't remember her name, when she says that they were right. Everything that happens down in the river affects upriver, and vice versa. And we know that. We know because we went to school and we know that. So they were just explaining what everybody should know and should have learned in the school. So they have other ways that they know, and they have other ways to explain to us. So perhaps we're just too used to the explanations that we use to receive in our own schools. Perhaps it's time for us to start opening our minds for other explanations. But everything is interconnected, and you know, if it's necessary, many PhDs are telling that. There are so many things that in that I would love that all of you, if you didn't have the opportunity to see the documentary, it's very interesting. It's something that we should know about the indigenous people in Colombia, and I really recommend everybody to see. And there were some scenes that for me were very sad, like the destructions of the rivers because they had to dry an entire area for construction. For me, that was unacceptable. So that's the reason I asked for you about the Constitution. What is happening? But you know, it's a problem that we still have to deal with, we lawyers and we human rights advocates. Well,
Thank you, Kat.
I would like, on behalf of CGS Minnesota, to thank you all for attending this event. If you want to watch again the recording can be found on our website and on YouTube channel in a couple of days. CGS Minnesota hosts events every month. Please visit our website to learn what the next events are. Thank you so very much, Diana Quintero, for you coming here, sharing your wisdom and everything that you shared with us. And I hope that we still can have you again other times in the near future. And for sure, when we go to Colombia, you are our go-to person for advice. I leave you, Diana, with your final thoughts and message.
Well, I think the word you just said, the connection, I think that's the word that better describes what we have seen in the film, what they really want to transmit. That everything is connected, and we sometimes we lose, opportunities for connecting to not only people but to different experiences, to different perspectives of the world, because we are all the time judging and framing everything and seeing everything from our own cultural glasses and cultural limits. So expanding our visions, accepting other possibilities, I think that's part of embracing cultural diversity. And I think that's a challenge for all of us nowadays in so many levels, not only regarding environmental rights, but also political rights and, and other, even civil rights, with the killings of peoples belonging to minorities. And so I think that the message that the Kogis successfully have sent out is that we are all together in this journey, and we need to be aware of the duties we have to each other for having a good journey, and to protect the land that God, no matter how you call him, has given us. Thank you for having me.
Thank you,
Thank you
Diana.
very much. Thank you, everybody.
So nice to see you.
Hope to
Nice to
see
see
you
you.
all soon.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.